Good evening, folks. Lord bless you. It's good to be with you again. It's Thursday, the 26th. I'm sitting in my truck again in Carnforth in the northwest of England, and I'm heading down to Leicester in the morning about 3:30 in the morning. So I'm trying to get this done fairly early so that I can go. I talked last time about Brian. And Brian Broderson and how had the question and answer session at the Calvary Scottish Conference. And let me just say something that perhaps I didn't make perfectly clear in the previous video blog. Brian Broderson is a wonderful, saved, born again, spirit filled believer. I have no doubt about that at all. That he chooses to defend Rick Warren as it's not great, but it doesn't make him a bad person. So please don't get the impression that I've got a downer on Brian. Although I strongly disagree with his stance on Rick Warren, I love him dearly, and he's a lovely brother. So I wanted to just say that. One of the other questions that I asked was, what's your thoughts on Word of Faith, and how can we deal with this more effectively as believers? And he was very unambiguous and very clear that I mentioned a few names, and names like Kenneth Copeland, Benny Hinn, Don Stewart, the one that sells the green handkerchiefs, Joyce Meyer, Creflo Dollar, T.D. Jakes, and there's many others. Who Kenny Hagen, of course, and so there's many of those, and as Brian was very clear that those are that they're heretics. It's end of story. They preach another gospel, a different gospel, a gospel that is not the gospel of Jesus Christ. So I was encouraged by that, and I was expecting that, and I'm glad that I heard it. One of the things that led me on to this week was to do a very quick study on faith, and so I did. And one of the verses that sprang to mind was, "The just shall live by faith." You know that of course was the verse that led Martin Luther to stand up against the Catholic hierarchy. And so I went and I had a wee look, and that is originally found in Habakkuk 2 verse 4, where it says that talking about the proud heart and unrighteousness, and but Habakkuk says that the just shall live by faith, and Paul reiterates this in Romans chapter 1 and verse 17, when it says, in fact verse 16 is a good place to start. It says, "I am not ashamed of the gospel, because it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone who believes, first to the Jew, then to the Gentile. For in the gospel the righteousness of God is revealed, a righteousness that is by faith, from first to last, just as it is written, the righteous shall live by faith." And that got me thinking about what faith is and how we express our faith. And the Hebrew word for faith is emunah, and the Greek word for faith is pistis. And in the Hebrew language and in the Greek language, when we translate things from different languages into English, they don't always carry the same meanings or the same emphasis, if you wish, And this is a word which is in that category. It really doesn't give you the whole picture, if you understand what I mean. Emunah, the Hebrew word, means, faith, of course, but it also means faithfulness. It's the same word and it means different things. Faith and faithfulness. The same with pistis in the New Testament, the Greek. Pistis means faith, but it also means faithfulness. And so, as I was thinking about this, I believe that we can't separate faith from faithfulness. If we have faith, we have to be faithful. One of the verses that I was looking at was Deuteronomy 32 and 20. If we go to Deuteronomy 32 and 20, I've got my iPad here. Just to look up the verses. Deuteronomy 32:20 says, "And he said, I will hide my face from them. I will see what their end shall be, for they are very perverse generation, children in whom there is no faithfulness. They have moved me to jealousy." This is talking about the children of Israel. "They have moved me to jealousy with which is not God. They have provoked me to anger with their vanities, and I will move them to jealousy with those that are not of people." So, faith and the lack of faith, faithfulness and unfaithfulness, if you can connect what I'm saying there, they didn't believe God. They didn't trust in God, the Israelites, and they became unfaithful. And there are many stories. I don't want to go in because I'm running out of time already, and I want to get through a couple of things. So what we can rely on by faith and receive by faith is also relied on and received by faithfulness. 1 John 3 and 22, we can see that the things that we ask for are related to our faith or to our faithfulness to His covenant and to the Lord's command. There was a verse in John chapter 14 and 14. It's talking about asking for things. So we can ask for things and believe we can receive things by faith. But if we are asking without being faithful, we're not asking in faith, because faith and faithfulness go together. James tells us, you have not because you ask not. And when you do ask, you ask amiss. Or, in other words, you ask with the wrong motives. John 14:14 says, you can ask anything in my name. This is Jesus talking. He says, you can ask anything in my name. But if you look at the context in which he says that, the very next verse, it says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. And we're not talking about the law, we're talking about the commandments that Jesus gave us, to love one another, to love our neighbour, to love the Lord our God with all our heart and all our mind and all our soul, and to love our neighbour as ourselves. That's the commandments that Jesus gives us, to love. If we do that, then we keep the whole law, we keep the whole commandments. But we have today the sin of covetousness. Timothy talks about that. He says we should be content. Timothy talks about being content with what we have. We should be content with the food that we eat, the clothes that we wear, the shelter that we have. And if God blesses us with more, then we should rejoice in that, because God has blessed us with more. But these word faith people, they have got this, you shouldn't suffer. You should not be sick. And if you are suffering and if you are sick, it's because of your lack of faith. Really? Can you be faithful without a lack of faith? I don't think so. And so they pervert the word of God. You're a king's kid. You shouldn't be sick, you shouldn't do this, and you shouldn't have that, and you should be rich, and you should drive a nice pink BMW, and if you're not, then you lack faith. Well, I don't buy it. And anyone with one or two brain cells and an open ear, a listening ear, shouldn't buy it either. Paul talks of in 2 Corinthians 4 and 8 about how he suffered his whole ministry. So does Paul have no faith? Was he unfaithful to God and to his calling? I don't think so. So there's a very quick word on faith and word of faith. Do not be taken in by these, what's the word, how do you say, shysters, con artists, perverters of God's truth. Do not be taken in, because God knows the heart of every man. He knows your faithfulness, and that's what's most important to him. God bless.